Imagine waking up to a world where friendships crumble overnight, secrets turn into headlines and power plays destroy trust, where one wrong move can turn allies into strangers, and whispers become the loudest voices in the room. Tonight we dive deep into the shocking split between Taylor Swift and Blake Lively, the mysterious silence, the hidden motives, and the story that no one saw coming. It started quietly like a storm building far beyond the horizon, where no one could see its shape. Yet everyone could feel the pressure rising. Taylor Swift and Blake Lively, two women who once appeared unshakable together, who shared laughter, holidays, and whispers of loyalty that stretched across stages and premieres until one day it all stopped. No announcement, no farewell, no smiling reunion, just silence, the kind that says more than words ever could. After Taylor released her latest album, the internet caught fire with speculation. A single like from Blake's account was all it took to fuel weeks of rumors then that vanished as fast as it appeared, and suddenly the whispers became a roar. People asked if this was a sign, if the friendship that once seemed so genuine had fractured beneath the weight of fame and power, and the rumors surrounding the It Ends With Us film set made the situation even stranger. Sources close to Taylor claimed the distance began when Blake allegedly used Taylor's name behind the scenes to gain leverage during tense negotiations on set. A claim that neither woman publicly confirmed, yet neither denied when attorney Brian Friedman spoke of extortion. Whispers turned into accusations. Fans wanted to know, was Taylor betrayed by someone she once called family? And as the silence deepened, new layers of the story surfaced, suggesting that Taylor's team had drawn a line, that contact had been cut off, that messages went unanswered, and trust had dissolved like glass under heat. But in Hollywood, silence is strategy. Every move, a calculation. And Taylor, known for turning her life into lyrics, seemed to be communicating not through statements, but through symbols, subtle actions, clues left for those paying close attention. It wasn't rage, it wasn't revenge, it was distance, and for those who knew her best, that said everything. Yet the deeper question remained. How did a friendship built in public unravel so fast behind closed doors when fame blurs the line between personal loyalty and professional survival? Can anyone truly stay friends when every headline becomes a weapon and every photo a story waiting to explode? As the days passed, Blake posted as if nothing had changed, while Taylor retreated into her world of songwriting performances and careful appearances. The unspoken tension lingered, a quiet cold war of two women standing on opposite ends of a stage that used to be shared. And somewhere between those unwritten texts and unfollowed accounts, the truth hid, waiting for the moment when one of them would finally break the silence. As the story unfolded, the internet transformed into a stage where every click became applause and every rumor a new act in this unfolding drama. Fans split into factions, some defending Blake as misunderstood, others swearing that Taylor had once again proven that loyalty has limits when trust is broken. Reports began circulating that Taylor's father himself had stepped in when the tension reached its peak, insisting that the situation had crossed a line, that Blake's behavior felt less like friendship and more like manipulation. Yet behind every leak and headline, there is always strategy. The kind where silence screams louder than any interview. One source claimed Taylor had vowed to protect her peace, that she would rather lose a friend than lose her calm after years of betrayal and misunderstanding. This wasn't about fame. It was about freedom from chaos. And the world began to understand that not every closed door hides anger. Sometimes it hides healing, but the entertainment world cannot survive without chaos. So speculation only grew the same way. Lightning hunts thunder. People searched for signs, a lyric here, a glance there. A rumor whispered in the corner of a red carpet interview saying maybe they reconciled, but each time a hope flickered, it vanished just as fast. Insiders close to both women spoke in riddles, some saying a reunion was impossible, others hinting that the wounds were too deep, too public, too sharp. And while the internet argued, Taylor stayed silent, using her art to say what her voice refused. To every performance, a coded message, every song lyric dissected like prophecy. Blake, on the other hand, carried on, smiling for cameras, walking the carpets beside Ryan Reynolds. Her life seemingly untouched by the noise, yet beneath that polished calm, there was something else, something unsaid like a storm. Building behind clear glass, fans noticed her liking posts about loyalty and trust, then unliking them moments later. It became its own language, a digital chess game between two powerful women. Each move deliberate, each silence deafening. And while their followers debated right and wrong, the industry watched quietly, knowing how these things work. Friendships in Hollywood are not built on coffee dates and long talks. They are built on influence on who can be trusted when the lights are off and the camera's gone. And in this case, both seem to realize that too much had been said, too much implied for the bridge to stand unburned. Those who knew both said the same thing. That Taylor's loyalty is a gift, once lost, never returned, that Blake's pride would never let her ask for forgiveness. And so they drifted like two satellites once perfectly aligned, now orbiting in silence around a story too complicated to explain and too profitable for the press to ever let die. As days turned into months, the absence of their connection became its own story. Headlines grew stranger, theories wilder. Some claiming it was all orchestrated, that the silence itself was a marketing move, a distraction while Taylor prepared her next era. Others insisting this was heartbreak, not strategy, that this was a woman who finally drew the line between art and exploitation, and chose peace over performance, and maybe they were both right, because in a world built on image, truth is never clean and loyalty never simple. While the storm of silence between Taylor and Blake kept the world watching, another story began to erupt beneath the surface, darker, stranger, and tangled in ways few could have imagined. It began with whispers of a woman named Laura Owens, whose name had already danced through headlines for months. This was not a celebrity feud. This was something more dangerous. Something that showed what happens when obsession turns to deception, when the line between truth and fabrication disappears. Like smoke in a mirror, Laura had once claimed to be carrying twins fathered by a reality star. And that claim unraveled into chaos as investigators peeled back layers of lies that seemed endless when she appeared again, this time in Arizona, facing charges. The headlines turned from gossip to crime. 7 felony counts, forgery, perjury, fraud, and evidence tampering. And as the truth crawled into the light, it revealed a web that stretched across states and screens. Witnesses, lawyers, and even strangers, dragged into a performance they never auditioned for. Among them, a man named Mike, who had once trusted her and was now forced to defend himself in a courtroom haunted by her stories. What began as a simple restraining order transformed into a trial that threatened to expose everything Mike had moved on, had a family had tried to rebuild. Yet Laura filed for an extension, claiming fear, claiming danger. But the court wanted proof, real proof. Not forged documents, not altered photos, not another illusion of victimhood. And that is when the witness list arrived, and it read like a script from a thriller. Clayton, the former Bachelor contestant, drawn back into the chaos. Greg, another man caught in her spiral, investigators, forensics experts, all prepared to reveal what had been hidden. Text messages that didn't match photos, letters proven to be fabrications, documents written with fonts that betrayed their falsehood. Each piece a puzzle leading toward one truth, that this was not a case of heartbreak. This was a performance, a grand act designed to manipulate attention, sympathy, and power. And while lawyers debated motions and evidence, Laura's own words became her undoing messages, where she spoke of revenge, of control, of shaping narratives, the kind of words that make judges lean forward in silence because they reveal more than evidence ever could. Those who had once defended her now stood on the other side of the courtroom, ready to speak the truth, not out of vengeance, but out of relief, a desire to be free from the constant fear of what lie would come next. And somewhere in the middle of all of it stood a single witness, once her friend, now her adversary, who had seen enough and decided to come clean to correct. The record to admit that not every sworn statement is built on truth, and that single decision may have changed the case forever for when lies crumble. They do not fall quietly. They fall like glass, and everyone standing too close feels the shards as the courtroom prepared for its final act. The world outside began to shift, restless and electric like the air before a lightning strike. The chaos that began with whispers and digital rumors had now spilled into the streets, protests, arrests, and voices clashing across the nation, each side claiming truth, each side drowning in the noise of its own outrage. And while television screens flickered with breaking news, the trial of Laura Owens became a symbol, a mirror reflecting how easily the line between fame and infamy can blur. Reporters waited outside in the dry Arizona heat, their microphones trembling in the wind as if the desert itself was holding its breath. Waiting for the verdict inside the courthouse, tension rippled like static. Every movement, every sigh felt amplified as witnesses took the stand one by one, their stories weaving together a portrait not of confusion, but of manipulation, precision, and control. The prosecution spoke of patterns of documents doctored beyond, recognition of lies rehearsed like monologues, while the defense clung to shadows, painting Laura as misunderstood, as desperate for love, Not attention, but the evidence told another story. Digital fingerprints, timelines, inconsistencies that no amount of charm could erase, and somewhere in the back of the room, the faces of those once deceived watched quietly. No anger, only exhaustion, the kind that comes when truth finally claws its way through months of deceit. Mike sat still, eyes forward, remembering every threat, every message, every sleepless night spent waiting for the next twist of the knife. This was not justice for fame. It was justice for freedom from fear, and for once silence was on his side outside the courthouse. The air trembled as cameras caught every flicker of movement, every closed door, every turning head, because in this world where narratives are currency, truth itself had become entertainment. And as the jury returned their decision, the sound of the verdict cut through, the air like thunder, guilty on multiple counts. The word echoed through the courtroom and out into the world, shattering the illusion that had stood for so long. Reporters ran headlines faster than they could type, influencers dissected expressions. Theories multiplied, but the truth was simple. The performance was over. Laura Owens would face sentencing, and those she had hurt could finally breathe again. Yet even in defeat, her story refused to die, because stories like these never really end. They evolve, they shift, they haunt. And somewhere far away in the quiet of a studio or a hotel room, Taylor Swift strummed a chord. Blake Lively scrolled through her phone, and both, perhaps for a fleeting moment, thought about how quickly loyalty fades, how easily truth bends, and how even silence can sound like a confession in the end. It was never just about fame or friendship or the fragile glass of reputation. It was about the cost of truth, the quiet price people pay when the lights fade. And the audience moves on. Taylor and Blake, once symbols of effortless loyalty, now stood as a reminder that even the strongest bonds can fracture under the weight of perception, while Laura Owens became a cautionary tale of what happens when illusion becomes identity, when lies stretch so far they begin to consume their own creator. The world watched these stories unfold, not because of who they were, but because of what they revealed about us. How we crave spectacle, how we trade empathy for entertainment, how we feed on chaos until it devours everyone in its path. But behind every headline, there are real people breathing, breaking, rebuilding, and somewhere beneath the noise, there is still a truth that refuses to die. Perhaps that is why silence has become the rarest language in our world, because silence cannot be twisted. It cannot be sold. It cannot be performed. It simply exists, waiting to be understood as the credits of this drama fade into memory. What remains are lessons written not in scandal, but in consequence. Loyalty without honesty becomes a cage power. Without empathy becomes poison and fame. Without truth becomes a shadow, chasing its own light. And as the world scrolls on, searching for the next storm to witness the next fall to dissect, we are left with the quiet realization that perhaps the real story is not in the noise at all, but in the stillness that follows, when the performance finally ends, when the masks drop, when the echoes fade, and all that is left is the simple human desire to start again. When the dust finally settled and the voices grew tired of shouting, there was only silence, the kind that stretches across screens and hearts, reminding everyone that truth is never clean and endings are never final. Taylor walked away from the noise carrying lessons carved from betrayal and peace born from distance. Blake stood beneath the same spotlight, but with a quieter grace, both women shaped by the same storm, yet moving in opposite directions, one toward solitude, the other toward resilience, and somewhere far from the cameras, Laura Owens faced the reflection of her own creation, the world she built from lies collapsing piece by piece until nothing remained but consequence. It was no longer about who was right or wrong, but about how easily truth can be buried beneath attention, how fame turns every story into spectacle and every pain into content. And as the final words of this chapter fade from trending lists, what lingers is the echo of choice, every decision, every silence, every step away or toward the chaos. Because in the end, no one escapes the narrative they help create. We build our own prisons out of pride, out of fear, out of the hunger to be seen. Yet freedom begins in stillness, in walking away, in choosing honesty, even when it costs everything. And maybe that is the hidden moral of this tangled saga. That power is fleeting. Truth is patient, and silence, though heavy, is sometimes the only way to heal the world. may move on hungry for the next scandal, the next betrayal, the next spark of outrage. But those who survive this storm know better. They know that peace is not found in proving a point, but in refusing to play the game anymore. When the curtain finally closed on the chaos that stretched from whispered rumors to courtroom confessions, the world was left staring at its own reflection, because beneath every headline, every viral post, every dissected friendship, and every public fall, there was a single unshakable truth. We are all drawn to the spectacle of human fragility. Taylor Swift and Blake Lively began as a story of loyalty and laughter, of holidays shared and private jokes that seemed unbreakable. Yet as fame often does, the light turned harsh and the shadows grew long. What once was warmth became tension, and what was private became public. The silence between them louder than any statement or song. Taylor learned that sometimes peace demands distance, that not every goodbye is betrayal, and that sometimes walking away is an act of self-preservation. While Blake learned that perception is a currency that fame demands control, and that even the kindest intentions can be twisted when the world is hungry. For conflict, their friendship became a mirror, reflecting how easily connection dissolves under the weight of scrutiny, how trust once fractured becomes a ghost, haunting every room where laughter once lived. And as their silence echoed across timelines and news cycles, another story unraveled in the desert heat. Laura Owens, a woman whose lies built a house too fragile to stand her tale, intertwined with obsession, deceit, and manipulation, until the truth tore through the illusion she had crafted. With precision, her downfall was both tragic and inevitable. A warning that control built on falsehood will always collapse beneath the weight of reality. Her trial was not just about crime, but about consequence, about how easily people become addicted to the narrative they create until they no longer remember where truth ends and performance begins. Her guilt was the final punctuation in a story that began with whispers and ended in the sharp clarity of exposure. Together, these stories form a single tapestry of modern fame, friendship, and truth. A reminder that in an age of screens and stories, perception often matters more than reality, that silence can be more powerful than any statement, and that healing sometimes comes only after the noise dies down. Taylor's quiet strength, Blake's calm exterior, and Laura's unraveling each revealed something about the world we live in, a world obsessed with narrative where everyone performs and everyone watches. Yet beneath the performance, there are still people fragile, searching, trying to find honesty in a place that rewards illusion. And maybe that is the final message buried beneath the chaos, that truth is not glamorous, that peace is not loud, that real strength is not in clapping back or proving someone wrong, but in standing still when the world demands you scream. Perhaps the only real power left is to walk away from the noise, to rebuild quietly, and to let silence speak where words no longer can, because when the performance ends and the cameras turn away, what remains is not fame or scandal or victory, but the quiet echo of truth waiting patiently to be heard.